Hey gang, welcome back to Jade's Garage. Today's video will be part 4 in the vintage air install in the 1968 Mustang known as Jade. I'm going to put in the condenser in front of the radiator and get the dryer mounted. If you like videos like this, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification to see more. Before I get too far along, I want to give a shout out to the patrons for this channel. Without that support, I would not be able to continue making videos, and I thank you for that. If you want to be part of the team, there's a link in the description below and you can join in as well. Okay, so I have installed the air box. You know, everything is done, at least from that part of it, under the dash of the Mustang, but I need to get the condenser in place and also the dryer. Now, as you can see, I still have the support structure there for the latch. That'll have to be removed, and then I'll have to assemble the pieces that hold the condenser in place and locate those in front of the radiator. Along with that, the dryer will have to find its home on the front of the core support, and I'm going to test fit the hoses that come from the box out to the dryer, or the condenser and the dryer. Now, whether I put those in place right now, I don't know, because I don't have the support structure for the shock towers. There's braces that run between the shock tower and the firewall, and those hoses attached to that. So we'll see what happens, but I may just mock them up and just see how things go. Alright, so as I said, we've got various pieces to install. The dryer, we've got a hardware kit for holding the dryer and all the other pieces together. I've got these tubes that I'm going to have to locate holes through the core support to make these work, and of course the condenser. I want to take a look at the instructions to verify where the oh, there's an extra bracket in there. I don't know what that one does, but that was inside of this instruction sheet. Alright, let's take a look at the instructions real quick. It's going to give you a parts list and go into dimensions for the opening for the core support. Being that this is a factory AC car, the opening is a bit bigger, so it's showing you the side-to-side dimensions, 24 inches, and then the center line to center line on the bracket, or the holes, is 21.5, and then some height measurements, you know, that should relate to the factory AC car. Now on the condenser, it says to install the dryer bracket on the front. So that'll go there, and the dryer will attach to that. And then it has two brackets that go to the rear. So the smaller one, I'm not going to flip this around, but the smaller one would go to the passenger side, and the larger one goes to the driver's side. From there, it shows you installing the dryer onto that front bracket and then connecting your lines. Now, we're not going to do any of the lines just yet. It points out that you should not uncap the dryer until you're ready to start doing these connections, because it'll start processing, let's say, the air around it. Now, this is where it gets a little more interesting. This has core support modification, and I didn't realize this. If I look up here, it says drain radiator, remove upper and lower hoses, and remove radiator. I didn't know I'd have to pull the radiator out of this. Surprise. It doesn't really matter. Vehicle with factory air using a template provided on page 13, which is right there. Shows you to put this in place and make a hole. Well, in this case, vehicle with factory air, it says drill a 1/4 inch hole through the core support, install the hardline support bracket onto the engine side, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. Anyway, what it's trying to tell you is you have two different configurations if you have a factory AC car or non-factory AC. What's going to be interesting on this car is, even though I replaced the core support, it doesn't have the hole for the tubing to come through from the factory. So this has to be, I'm going to have to modify the core support. But then it shows you these different pictures depicting where this plate goes, which is identified here. That's a support plate. Anyway, we'll get into that in just a minute. Then it's showing you putting in the condenser assembly, and it's going to go on the back side of the core support, and then it's telling you to put in the radiator and the shroud. Now, I don't have a shroud. Maybe I need to look into that. I probably will have to look into that, but I do not have a shroud. And then connecting your hard lines and various other things. Now, there is a place on my core support where it's called a knockout, basically, that is already cut, but it's not fully removed. So I'll have to address that. And then it's talking about moving your OEM horn bracket, positioning it a little bit so that you can have everything in place. And I think that's it. Okay. So I'm going to start with just assembling the condenser. Okay, I'm going to get started here and put on the bracket for the dryer onto the, as you look from the front, the right side of the condenser. And it points out that it should be in the first and third hole. And just take a couple little what are they? Number 10, 4 1024 nuts with star washers, and 4 number 10 24 panhead screws. So the front view, right? So I'm just going to flip this over and try to be consistent with it. If I take this, which is, it says rear view, and I'm going to turn it away from the camera basically, so that the angles remain the same, right? So if I take the longer bracket and turn it around, so if you look at it upside down, you can see the fat end has the 2 holes. This one has 1 hole. So I'll put that in place because this one is shorter. Yeah, this one is definitely the bigger bracket. Okay, same thing. Just going to take these number 10 screws and put them into the holes. Flip it back over, and it talks about mounting the dryer onto that front bracket. So we'll take a look at that. I might have some other ideas going. Let me just look at that real quick. That mounts that dryer fairly high, and that may come into play later, because if you look at the assembled part, you know, it's showing the dryer sitting pretty high on that bracket, which isn't a, you know, that's the way it's going to have to be. But I have some other concerns, because one of the when the instructions go forward, it tells you to drain the radiator, remove, you know, radiator and all that. I want to try to do this without pulling the radiator. So let me just see if I can make this happen. As I said, it wants you to bring in the condenser as if the radiator is not there. And I don't know what I would really gain from that. I mean, I took all the assembly off the front here for the hood latch, and the bracket is off of the radiator, so I can move it. And I was thinking, well, can I just push this back? Can I push the radiator back and just kind of bring it between? But let me show you this. With all the brackets on it, I can just slip it in. And I mean, it fits. The only thing that I see that is interfering at all is the way the brackets interact with the opening for the core support. And what I mean by that is this one right here has a peak on it, and it's hitting on that side of the core support, which is lowering or causing the hole to be a little bit low where the bolt goes through. Now on the instructions, and I could see where they're trying to get you to do it a certain way, they're showing the nut clips or U-nuts attached to the core support so that the long side, let's say where the bolt comes through, is sticking towards the front of the car. The idea being that you put the condenser in and you run the bolts out. I was just thinking of different ways to do this. I mean, I could reach my hand in there from up above, I believe, and get in here and put these bolts in. But I don't see why I couldn't put the nut clip on the other way and just bring the bolts from the front. Looks like it'll work. The only thing I'm going to have to consider is, now this is just a 2-core radiator. I know that, and that's going to concern me later on, I know. But for now, I have a 2-core radiator. The only problem I see is the length of these bolts. Because if you had a 3-core, it would hit. So as the bolt comes through, let me see if I can get a better angle of that. So with a 2-core radiator, if the bolt was going this direction, you're about a 1/4 inch away. Well, not even that. If I set the radiator up, you're almost touching the radiator with that 2-core. So a 3-core wouldn't work. That's why they wanted to have it going that direction. That's the easy answer. So as I think about this, if I took this bolt, either got shorter bolts or cut this down, I could easily eliminate 1/2 inch or more off of the threads and just bolt it from the front. If I have to deal with it later, like if I decide to change out the radiator, well, then I can undo this. It's not going to hurt anything to pull these clips and flip them around and run the bolts from the forward. Another thing that may come into play if you were to have the radiator in place, and that's why I was holding off on the dryer, it would be a hard time to get it down between here if you wanted to come from the front, or from between the radiator and the core support. That dryer is going to be huge and take up a lot of space. So by waiting and attaching the dryer afterwards, that will eliminate that problem. And now as I look at it a little more, I can push the radiator back and get my hand all the way down to these bolts. So I'll put it in like they recommend, but I'm not going to pull that radiator out. But before I do that, I have something else I want to address. It tells you to cut out this little template, and it talks about the configurations, like if your car had AC or didn't have AC. Well, you probably can't see it here, but there is a knockout piece right here. So it talks about welding that shut. Well, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to weld anything on this core support right now. And it tells you to take this template, and of course it would be turned around, and put it up in place right here to give you a location for this hole, and also a location for the hole that holds this bracket. And the idea is, if you had this knockout in place, or it was removed, that you could take this bracket and bolt it on in such a way that it would act as a support for those tubes. Okay, so I don't want to knock out anything. I mean, if I have to, I'll look at it a little bit harder, but it's telling you, in this case, to drill an 1.25 inch hole through this location right here so that you can put a grommet and it'll support the tubes. So again, the options, are to use this as a support structure or cut a hole here, and I think that's why I want you to weld that shut. But I'm going to look at maybe just making that hole and seeing if I can get the grommet in there. If I can, I'm going to leave it that way. If I can't, then I'll do something else. But this template, it follows this curve right here of the core support. So if I were to put it on the back side, which is what it wants, it would look something like that. When you do that, though, it gives you this OEM hole right here, which is this hole. Well, if I put this in place, and what I did is I backtraced it so that I could see where that hole was. So when I put it in place on the back side, I had a definite impression of where that needed to be. Then I could take a snap punch and come up, and once I'm comfortable with the location, I can snap the center mark for the hole that I need to drill, and then start working that hole up to size. So I think I have two options. I measured off a washer that was 1.25 inches, or I could just use this plate that I sent with the kit, find center, and make it happen. If I compare that with the washer, I already know it's going to be a hair small. So I'll need to remove all of that material to make sure it's going to fit. I'm noticing that this edge of this cutout, as they call it, is a little, it's close to that where the circle is. So I may cheat that over just a little. We'll see. That's pretty close. I just want to break off the edges. A little belt sander, that'll work even better. Nice. Now get some paint on that. Okay, so I've run into a small problem. What I did on the bracket on the driver's side is I knocked that corner off so that it could sit a little bit higher. And as I put it in place, I did put the nut clips on as they directed. It just is going to make it easier, I think, overall in this situation. And I should point out, if I don't mention it, I didn't mention it earlier, I did take off the fan off of the engine, so that's why I can move the radiator back. But as I put this in place, I found that the right side has good clearance now, but once you get everything in, like these nut clips, that adds a little bit of thickness to this flange technically. Well, now the top of the condenser tube right here is hitting right there in the corner, which doesn't allow it to go high enough to get a bolt in. So I'm going to have to massage that in a little bit. Just going to use a body hammer or put a dolly behind it and tap that and just try to give it a little more shape. See if that helped. Now it looks like I can get all the bolts in. Very good. Okay, let's see if we can make this happen. Before I finish tightening up the bolts, I want to make sure that this upper bracket well, looks like a minor conflict. I mean, I know I put it in the way they recommend it. Yeah, I mean, it's plated in from the back side coming forward. So there's the core support showing it going in, coming forward. And what I'm running into is it's hitting, the radiator is hitting the brackets. Now, could that be that I have worn rubber bushings at the bottom? Maybe. But what it's doing is it's not allowing this bracket to meet the face of the core support here. It's close. I think what I'm going to do, and I'll show you where it's hitting. So where it's hitting is the underside of the tank, if the light's good enough there, is hitting that upper bracket. Let's see if I can throw some more light on it. There you go. So there, that's where it's hitting. Right there. So the taper, it does have a taper to it, but might need to take a little bit of material off. It's doing the same thing on the driver's side. And when you do that, it's trying to change the shape of the bracket. And you definitely don't want stuff chattering on the radiator tank or any part of the radiator. So I'll take that corner, knock it down, do that on both sides, and then we'll have another look. So here's what I did. I ground down or sanded down the top edge here and kind of created a joggle, I guess is the way I want to word it. If you look at the shape, this used to have an angle running down. I shortened this part and then I cut this back. So now, no interference. And I did the same thing on the driver's side. You see, oh, it's a notch. We'll say it's a notch. So now it actually goes underneath the radiator. And in doing that, if I put the bracket in place, it now meets, it makes contact. Problem solved. This is all solid, not going anywhere. I did put paint on top of all the shiny parts of the bolts and bolt heads because I didn't want them to show through the grill. Radiator clears. So now the next thing is it wants you to put in the dryer. And as I mentioned, it's going to want you to use the second and third hole to mount it. And another thing I want to point out, it's kind of odd, but if you look at this, it says flow and it's pointing that way. And if you look at the instructions, the word flow is on the front of the dryer and it's pointing to the left. Now I don't know if they just did a poor job labeling or if they wanted you to be able to hide that, because up here at the top it says in. So I'm going to assume flow in, it's going to want it like that. That's my assumption. So anyway, you put these clamps in and attach it, and you may have to adjust it around because you're going to be using this tube which will attach to the lower port on the condenser and then to the dryer. And if I look at it, it's a little bit out of shape. Like if I were to compare the angle or the plane of these two fittings, this one looks like it's aimed uphill a little bit, so I may have to adjust that. And then this funky looking one is going to go through that hole and onto that. So it might be easier to get this one in place now so that you're not fighting with it with the dryer in front of it. Just a thought. And then this one will also attach to the dryer and go through that hole as well. So I think what I'll do is get this one in place first. Alright, I have oil on the O-ring, and I'm going to feed that in there. Well, alright, so I want to get the upper line in place. Going to put some oil on the O-ring, of course. Make sure it's lubricated. Oh, well, let me get this up here and we'll see how it goes together. I want to point out, it talks about holding, you obviously hold this side still with the wrench and turn the nut. And it's talking about the O-rings, which I ran into in the other problem with that, doing the other install. But it gives you some torque. I don't know how you're going to measure, torque on these unless you have a specific, type of wrench. But it's saying that number 6 is 11 to 13, number 8 is 15 to 20, and number 10 is 21 to 27 foot-pounds. So this is a number 8, so 15 to 20. I don't have a specific tool that I can use as a torque wrench for this purpose, so that's my guess. And what I'm trying to do here is make sure this isn't hitting the top edge of that hole. So a little massaging and that's in place. We'll get the dryer up and get the other tube connected. Now it talks about the dryer being held on with 2 number 10 by 1/2 inch sheet metal screws. So I already know I want to have that flow pointing to that direction. See if I can't. And these are a 5/16 head on these. And I just want to get them in place. I'm not trying to make everything tight just yet. Now here's the thing, something else I need to consider. It talks about not opening this up until, or not leaving it open and exposed. So I have to consider whether or not I really want to put this on yet, because I'm not going to be able to charge this system for quite a while yet. And obviously it's got to go a little higher. So what do? I can connect it, and I can connect the hoses, but is that really what I want to do right now? Okay, I think I've made a decision. I am not going to connect these lines yet. The instructions clearly point out, do not remove the caps from the dryer. The dryer contains a desiccant that will quickly absorb moisture from the air, causing it to lose effectiveness. For this reason, Vintage Air recommends that the dryer remains capped until the installer is ready to evacuate the system. So, I have the lines where I want them. I think they're going to look okay, you know. It's always going to look funky having a bunch of weird looking tubing going on. But I'm going to put the radiator mount back in place, and I think I'm good to go. You know, I could still connect the tubes or the hoses, but that's not going to help because they're still, until it's under vacuum, it's not worth taking these caps off. So I'm going to call it a stopping point right now. I didn't have all of these bolts in there to begin with. These two were in these holes. I was like, yeah, I know these were here. I'll just put the fan back on and move forward. Well, it took a little bit of work, but after modifying the brackets, the condenser fits. Now, I am not going to connect those tubes to the dryer just yet. As I said, the dryer needs to stay sealed up until you're ready to vacuum things down. So it just makes sense. I'm not going to mess with the hoses because, well, there's no point in putting them in until I'm at that stage where everything, again, can be vacuumed down. So I think I'm at a stop. I think I'm at a stop with the AC stuff. Now I mentioned that I did want to paint the dash. I think I'm going to hold off on that because I have some more work to do up front here. I finally got the bolts for the rock guard, so now I can do a true test fit of all the pieces. And as I mentioned, I mentioned in one of the other videos, I plan on converting or modifying this lower valance to be more open. So I need to do some metal work to the valance to make it the way that I want it to look. I know somebody had mentioned, you know, buy a Shelby style valance spoiler, but I don't want to do that. I want to do my own twist on it, and so I have some plans. So I think I need to take care of that, and then all of these pieces will be ready for primer. So I'm going to keep moving forward and try to get as much done as I can. Thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing. Leave a comment, let me know what you think about these videos, and I look forward to sharing the next video with you soon. Until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya. Interesting. Makes sense to make sure that dryer stays dry, you know, before I can. All right, so I think I'm at a stop with the AC stuff.